So I'd like to ask my audience an honest question. Do you think in 1996 or in 2000, any member or former member of the Michigan militia would have been allowed to run for president? Even though the individuals responsible for this were only tangentially associated with that group, I very much doubt that they would have been allowed on the ballot. Does anyone out there think that if any Branch Davidian had survived this assault by Washington, D.C., would they have ever been allowed to run for office anywhere? Of course they wouldn't. When you plot to overthrow your government and you commit violence doing so, you're not going to be allowed to run for office. And that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. There's this story that the only reason Nicolas Maduro won the presidency is because he banned his opposition from running. First of all, the opposition decided not to participate, and those who were banned from running were caught red-handed attempting sedition, attempting to overthrow, being traitors to their government, colluding with a foreign government to do so. See, they say here in the United States that anyone can run for president. Well, not everyone can get on the ballot. See, they love to play these games. It's like anyone can run. All you need to do is be of a certain age, be a naturalized citizen. Anyone can run. Oh, sure, you can run. Try to get on the ballot. Ask the libertarians, ask the Green Party, whether you agree with them or not, how hard it is to even get your name on the ballot. That's a whole different argument, and that's why I have said no solution to our problems exists in D.C. They need to go away. All of our solutions are in our governor's offices. Now, they are slipping in their language because they're telling lies and they can't even keep them straight. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Venezuelan vice president to fly into Moscow for talks on Friday. Wait a minute. Vice president? Wouldn't she be vice dictator? I didn't think Nicolas Maduro was the president. Oops. See here, they just can't control their language. They slipped. And what the U.S., Washington, D.C., does not want you to know is that the part of the Constitution that this random guy named Juan is attempting to take advantage of to proclaim himself interim president would only allow for the vice president to take over in case the president wasn't able to fulfill his duties. He is irrelevant, but he's a U.S. puppet, and we are seeing all sorts of psyop games being played by now not only the senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, but now we see it from Bolton. And I would encourage anyone in Venezuela, in the government, within the sound of my voice, to just ignore this. It's childish garbage, and it's only meant to inflame and to goad the Venezuelan government into acting in ways that they are trying to project, because we truly are run by a dictatorship right now, and we have been for a long time. Here's a great picture, in case anyone thinks I'm kidding, of our Vice President, Pence, joining in a singing of the Venezuelan national anthem. Doesn't that just warm your heart? And talk about being epically wrong. 5 February, in an interview with Al Jazeera, of all places, random guy named Juan said nobody is going to take a risk for Maduro. Really, other than the 99.995% of the military that is still standing right beside him? What happened to the 250,000 or 500,000 people of the country of Venezuela that you called upon to surround the military bases? Where did they? Didn't show up, did they? The reality defeats the lie. Because had everything he was saying been true, the DC would have not been needed. There would be no use for us. The people would have risen up and overthrown this guy a long time ago. He is alleging now that he's going to attempt to sneak back into Venezuela, where he will be arrested because he was prohibited from leaving the country, because he was colluding with a foreign government to overthrow the duly elected government of his country. That would happen here. If there had been a bunch of petulant Democrats, for example, in this last election cycle that didn't accept the result, that went to China or called upon China to intervene afterward and try to force some kind of change in our government, what do you think would happen to the people in this country that would have been caught colluding with a foreign government to overthrow ours? Forget the whole Russian thing. This is what's going on in Venezuela. They have rules just like we do. And when you violate those rules, you are going to face the consequences for it. Are all of these people now dictators? This is the Supreme Court of Venezuela, who were the ones that issued the prohibition. Random guy named Juan does have a position. He is part of the National Assembly. And the reason I call him random guy named Juan is because the National Assembly just looked around and said, okay, we're going to pick you. Everybody who wants this guy to be interim president, raise their hand. And they did. And that was the basis upon which he declared himself. That's pretty random. He will be arrested if he goes back into Venezuela. But this is how Washington, D.C. is going to play this in the media, and I'm calling it right here. They're not going to call it an arrest. They're going to call it a kidnapping. And then they are going to petition the UN to allow for forces to go in to retrieve this kidnapped foreign leader. That's how Washington, D.C. is going to couch the phrasing. This evil, terrible, horrible socialist dictator that released, in good faith, 5 members of the opposition that had been convicted of doing what I'm talking about, colluding to overthrow the government. You would be under a prison in the United States and nobody would ever hear from you again if you were caught and convicted of doing this. Especially if you were a member of the military. I still believe they have the death penalty for that. In the United States, you know, that bastion of freedom and democracy and human rights, that's number 5 in the world for police murder. And this goes back to 2016 and farther back even, lest anyone think I am castigating the current administration too heavily. The playbook has not changed from Trump to Obama to Bush, all the way back, even through the Clinton era. This leader of Venezuela tried, he didn't have to negotiate with these people. They did not want to be negotiated with. They wanted him to just walk away and resign and just hand the keys of the kingdom to Washington, D.C. 2 different times. One of the times was mediated by the Vatican. And we all know how that goes. They tried to do a recall vote, but once again, this opposition that everybody keeps talking about, they are a fractured group. They are full of criminals, people that have been charged and convicted of crimes. The guy that's representing Venezuela here, friend of Juan Guaido, convicted criminal. All of these other guys, Leopoldo Lopez, the guys that are in Puerto Rico, all of them are criminals. No one from the Michigan militia, I guarantee, would ever be allowed to run for president ever again. Neither would you. And even if you were allowed, you would never be able to have your name on the ballot unless, of course, you had massive amounts of financing. It's just how it is. They can't control their lives anymore. And I would like anyone who disagrees with me on this to please provide links. Show me where I'm wrong. This story of dictator is ridiculous. Even if you would accept it, being a dictator doesn't preclude you from negotiating and being allies with the United States, does it? Because we are allied with many. In fact, our current leader is talking to one. This idea of starving the people. If that were really the case, they've been running that story out since 2014. And how long does it take for an entire country to starve to death? I'm not sure. They show pictures, anecdotally, of one person here, two people here, a few over here. They show an empty grocery store over there. I could show you those same pictures here in the United States. I could show you those pictures in other places in the world. But I've also shown you pictures of these opposition people. When you see them in large groups, none of them are starving. So the dictator story is false. The starving story is false. Are there food shortages? Sure. Is there economic hardship? Yes. But once again, you would have to be someone who just believes what Fox News tells you about the cause of it. It's not socialism, because socialism has worked fantastically in Europe. We just haven't sanctioned them. See what happens if we sanction Norway, if we sanction Sweden, if we sanction any of those European countries and prevent them access to U.S. markets and then seize their bank accounts. See what happens if you do that to any country. It's just this country, Venezuela, has the largest known oil reserves, huge gold mines and coltan, and basically our current leader just has a fixation. And they can't explain this article where they slipped. And they referred to this woman as the vice president. They accidentally told the truth. And I guess I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.